Hi everybody and welcome to another edition of Bina007 movie reviews, and once again I am joined by Matthieu
Hi.
to talk about a film that I think we both know and love called The Last Unicorn, which is a 1982 animated fantasy film. It's directed by Jules Bass and Arthur Rankin Jr., but the key fact is that it was animated by Topcraft, which is the predecessor to Studio Ghibli. So we are really excited to talk about this movie through this movie. If you're playing along at home, you should hopefully have a version that's an hour and 30-ish minutes long, and we're going to start not where all the company logos are, because I think a lot of people will be watching this streaming, and we can talk about the reasons why it's quite hard to get hold of. So we're going to start right at the start of the movie, and I'm going to count 3, 2, 1, go. So 3, 2, 1, go. So here we are with the start of the film. So hopefully you're seeing a beautiful forest clearing and the night sounds and the glade opening. Matthieu, you're the one who suggested that we watch this kind of partly as a tribute to Christopher Lee, the late Christopher Lee.
Yes, because he does two versions of the film. Actually, he speaks King Haggard in the English and the German version.
Which is amazing, right? Because Christopher Lee is fluent German. He's an amazing character. Sir Christopher Lee, I should say. He was a spy, I think. He was an aristocrat. He was a man of many talents, and apparently was a great fan of the book by Peter S. Beagle, and had very strong decisions when he came to this project about the lines that should be in it, and much like when he played Saruman in Lord of the Rings, had very strong editorial opinions, I should say.
Yeah, and the reason we are making this obviously is because recently he passed away, and so this is one that I always fancied a lot, because I have to say I generally don't watch this film in English. I watch it in German because it's to me I grew up with it in German, so it's always, I mean, same with Disney films actually. Some of them I've seen in English, and then I continue to watch them in English, and some of them I saw in German when I was little, and so I continue watching them in German because that's just the characters that I'm used to.
So did you first see this? I mean, this came out in 1982, so presumably you first saw it on DVD rather than...
Oh, I watched it on VHS when I was, I mean, because I was born in the in the 90s, so it's like I'm really, I still grew up with VHS, but not too long before DVDs came in as well. So it's.
And were you, or are you, a fan of Studio Ghibli in general?
Oh yeah, I own most of their films actually, because it's that's why I actually chose this film as well, because you can see like the animation is really unique, and some of it resembles later Ghibli stuff as well. So I guess it's it's all sort of as it's a history lesson also of the beginnings of the studio, I guess.
Absolutely.
And yeah,
so we should probably just, as a marker for people who aren't watching the DVD at the same time, just explain that in this opening scene we're in an enchanted forest, and we have a beautiful unicorn who is in fact the last unicorn, and she's about to be told that the reason she's the last of her kind is that the Red Bull, this is before Red Bull drink, has herded her kind to the ends of the earth. So it's a classic quest tale that she is going to try and find where the rest of her kind are and defeat the Red Bull. So that gives you the sort of the setup for the film. And
here we have the title sequence, which is with the song by America, was it? The band that sings the songs in here.
Yeah, I'd forgotten. Classic sort of.
Yeah, that's one. That's like the. It's like Highlander. The music is also very iconic. It's
absolutely.
Like
I also love how with this opening sequence it feels like a sort of like a medieval tapestry in a way. It's so beautifully done.
I think it's actually from a real one.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and so that's when there's, for example, there are moments where the animals move and then they become sort of static, which is I guess sort of a reference to there's lots of imagery that refers to medieval tapestry, because obviously unicorns have been part of the mythological fabric of Europe for a long time.
Absolutely.
And, it's I mean, it's weird that at least because did you read the book by any chance?
I haven't read the book ever. I probably should, actually. I'm searching for books to read with my goddaughter, so this probably would be quite a good one.
Because this one is actually pretty. I mean, the film adaptation is actually pretty close. It only leaves out like a couple of things.
Because because the screenplay is by the author, I guess, which is amazing. And it's probably also worth just saying to people who maybe aren't watching it that the voice cast of this film is amazing. I mean, it's Jeff Bridges as the prince, Mia Farrow as the last unicorn, as well as Christopher Lee as is it King Haggard? You've also got Angela Lansbury as the witch. I mean, it's for the time, and considering this wasn't Disney, who at the time I guess would have just dominated animation. I mean, this is an amazing, amazing cast. And
yet, when it came out, it didn't receive like glowing reviews because people didn't feel that the animation was as up to standards of the time, in the sense that
amazing to me.
Yeah, I mean, it holds up because. I mean, it's not probably as smooth as you would expect from, let's say, a 90s Disney movie like The Lion King or something, which looks pretty stunning as well, or Hunchback of Notre Dame or something like that. It's not that kind of animation, but it's much more quiet and subdued, I guess, is what I'd say. It's subtle.
Absolutely.
Not a lot of movement in there. I mean, and when there is, it's really quiet. Like I mean, for example, there's a petal here that's falling on the water. It's like the shot lingers on it, which is that sort of thing doesn't happen a lot, but it's also part of, I guess, the spirit of the book, which is really sort of sad and melancholic and that sort of thing. So it's
very poetic in a way, and I wonder if it's just more. I don't want to do down those Disney movies because I mean I love Disney movies, but it just feels more sophisticated in a way.
Yeah, it feels like a grown-up animated feature, actually, with because of the ideas, not because of the content necessarily. Just because of what it talks about. And we'll. I mean, when we get there, we'll hopefully talk about it. But
absolutely. It's lovely.
Robin. I mean, it's like this. The butterfly is the sort of Robin Williams' predecessor. I always thought, it's like the genie in Aladdin, but as a butterfly.
With the kind of the weird bottle glasses and the little sort of those boater hats, as if he's off to the Kentucky Derby.
Yeah. Does he have a beret on? I'm not sure.
I think it's a little straw boater. Let me see when he settles again. But he's a wonderful character. I often wonder if, because it was after this that the My Little Pony craze happened.
Oh, yeah.
I wonder if, although this wasn't so commercial... Well, actually, I mean, it took money, though, didn't it? It didn't lose money. But no. I wonder if this then inspired that whole My Little Pony craze, which was definitely big when I was a kid.
Yeah, but nothing like the one that we have now, apparently, from what I hear. It's like, even they're just like, the new My Little Pony stuff is apparently not exclusively made for girls anymore, which is a good thing. I'd say, but it's not my thing. But I can see why someone.
Actually, no, it's not a straw boater. Maybe you're right. Maybe it is a beret. You're right. He's wearing. So let's talk about unicorns.
Oh yeah, unicorns. This unicorn looks nothing like traditionally unicorns are described, right? Because they are more like goat. They're more goat-like, I guess, is what
really.
I'm saying.
I always thought unicorns looked like this, which was elegant horses with a horn on their head.
I mean, I can see, but it's just like when I look at old paintings of unicorns, like they either look like horses or they look like goats, and this is sort of a good mix in between. So maybe my statement earlier was a bit erroneous because I actually this is how I usually picture unicorns, but I think that from when you look at how they originated. And where people got their ideas from, I guess, when they looked at rhinoceroses, that sort of thing.
So it's worth saying that this is a animated film, but it's also a musical.
Oh, yeah.
And that as the butterfly is now singing a song, and that the music is by Jimmy Webb, who, again, maybe is not someone you would consider to be a classic musical composer, and probably more akin to, say, Elton John doing The Lion King. He wasn't a pop singer, but he did. I think he wrote songs like he wrote Wichita Lineman, I seem to remember. But he's done lots and lots and lots of songs. Like he did songs for Frank Sinatra, he did songs for Barbra Streisand, for America, hence the title song,
well,
John
America.
Warwick. But he's done songs that have been covered by people like R.E.M. So I guess country composer. Is how you would describe him.
I'd say.
But really lovely music, I think.
Yeah.
But like The Lion King, it's sort of just from an unconventional source, I guess.
That's why I'd like to. I mean, that's why I like to own the soundtrack of certain films that that I enjoy, because this is something that is very moody. It puts you in a certain inner place. I'd say it's very majestic. I'd say it's very, very elegant.
I agree. It's hard to get hold of, though. I mean, if you want to just like go out and buy either the movie or the soundtrack, I think because it's not by a big studio, like it's not on iTunes, it's not in a lot of obvious places you'd go to buy it. And I think the problem is that shortly after this was done, I mean, ITC I don't think exists anymore, who made the film, and then Topcraft obviously got into financial difficulties, which is why you could then have the main artists sort of reforming as Studio Ghibli. So it sort of feels to me a little bit like this is an undiscovered classic that, because it's harder to get hold of, it's not like Sleeping Beauty or Cinderella where lots of people own it for their kids, and that's a real shame, I think.
Yeah, I own the VHS, but since the beginning of DVD, I sort of tried to also get a hold of the DVD, which I now have, but I only came across it by accident when I was in Germany. Like in a DVD shop, I found it, and that's something like that, where you don't actually expect to find it, and then you just come across it. That's I imagine how people might be able to get it. It's not something that you could purchase like everywhere, and that's a bit sad, I guess. Otherwise, maybe over Amazon you might be able to purchase to order it or something.
Yeah, I mean it's a weird one. I mean, I'm actually, which is very rare for me, because I do normally like to sort of buy and pay the artist whose work I'm watching. I'm actually watching it on a YouTube link because it was literally the only way I could find it. And according to Wikipedia, which may or may not be right, due to ongoing contractual disputes, none of the proceeds of DVD purchases reach Peter Beagle,
which is sad.
Which is sad.
He should be rewarded for it, because he has, he came up with the story in the first place. So it's
So but apparently there's all sorts of weirdness going on with contractual disputes, and it involves Lionsgate, and they went into bankruptcy, obviously. So yeah, it's just, I feel it's a film that if you're listening to this and you haven't seen it and you have kids, really it's worth trying to find. And even if you don't have kids, it's gorgeous.
This is very interesting because
the seasons.
Not just that. It's also the idea that some people might be able to see her as a unicorn, and some people don't see her as. I mean, they just see her as a horse, right? And in the book, it's like it's something that the prideful unicorn doesn't really like, actually, And I like the fact that the shadow actually looks like a unicorn shadow, but to the guy, it's it's a normal horse.
This sort of baldy Friar Tuck character is trying to capture her. It's, I mean, there's a lot in this film I think about, which is quite modern. It's quite sort of contemporary, about self-perception and self-ideation in a way. Mm-hmm. Like a lot of it is about the unicorn and how people see her and how she sees herself. And as we get later in the film to the very kind of pivotal moment where she's turned into a princess, like this idea that this magical, immortal thing will know what it is to live in another body, and kind of body dysmorphia. It's, in some ways, you could read it as a very interesting tale of, body horror in a way. It's probably overdoing it a little bit.
Right?
Pardon?
A journey of self-discovery.
Yes, for
sort
sure.
To recognize who you are and what you are, and whether or not appearances actually matter in that sense or not. I mean, it's I'd say the film the film doesn't necessarily come down on one side of it, but it certainly acknowledges that there is something, that is making the unicorn perceive herself as something at that moment later in the film.
Yeah.
Which, wouldn't be the case otherwise, right?
And I think you're right. And I think what's powerful about the film is that it doesn't come down on one side or the other, and that by the standards of children's films, and certainly Disney films, it has a very ambiguous ending where kind of it is all about the discovery that on the one hand, she's experienced these things that could be seen as quite negative and freaking her out, and then on the other hand, at least she's learn and experience some things that would not have otherwise been available to her in just the unicorn form. So I really love it. I mean, it's in a sense, it's a coming of age film, and maybe that's why kids of a certain age kind of react well to it. I don't know.
One thing I should note is that, the backgrounds here are very
stunning,
richly colored, and that, very bright greens and reds, when you have sundowns and that sort of thing. And now we get to the witch part of the story,
Mama Fortuna.
Yeah, which I always found really interesting, because in the book there's a part that they leave out with one of the attractions that she has, which is very interesting because it has to do with death and despair and that sort of thing.
Oh, okay.
Which they didn't show here. So
we should explain that Mummy Fortuna's Midnight Carnival, some of the exhibits are real, like the unicorn, but some of them are kind of magicked up, like they're not genuine.
Yeah, they're just falsehoods. They are visions. They're meant to make people believe that they're seeing a mythological being, when in fact it's just, an old animal in a cage, which is, it's very cruel. Sorry.
Yeah, it's quite funny to me because I always think, when I think of animated musicals, I always think of Angela Lansbury as Mrs. Potts in Beauty and the Beast, who's just so warm and lovely.
Oh, yes.
And who she turns up here as this sort of warty old hag.
Well, she mellowed, because this film came out earlier, maybe she mellowed out a little.
Yeah. But it's fantastic. She really reminds me a little bit in prototype of the washerwoman in what's the Spirited Away?
Oh yes, the witch character.
Yes,
as well. Yeah,
if we're looking for sort of proto Ghibli stuff.
Yeah, that's definitely where visually it's very, very close. I'd say, and then she gives a second horn that other people can actually see, even though they might not believe. So that's how she manages to convince them that she has a unicorn, because if they didn't believe, they wouldn't be able to see it.
Yeah, capturing a unicorn that no one can see the horn and recognize as a unicorn does not make for a good sort of circus show. Yeah. Put it that way.
And here we have the attractions, right? They don't show them right away, but it's I just like the idea that they have a dragon in there, and it's like that's so dangerous, but why wouldn't it be able to escape and that sort of thing? It's like still. And obviously, I'd like to think that some of these creatures actually exist in that world, right? That they're not just...
Yeah, they're not all fake, right? I mean, some of them are real. There's
one in particular that's, that's also real, but we'll get to that later. And so now we get introduced to another character.
Schmendrick,
the magician, who also says that he's a real magician, actually.
And who is played by Alan Arkin, of all people.
Oh, yes.
That's so weird, to me, as casting, but it works.
It's like a really strange voice. Like he sounds like you could believe that he's a nerd, essentially, that he doesn't really know what he's doing at the moment. It's like, but he's so passionate about what he's trying to do. And so the only thing is that in the book, I believe he's meant to be older than he he appears.
Okay.
So it's like, I guess it's I maybe I misremember it, but I seem to recall that there was a curse involved or something. But yeah, also something, because he believes himself to be a real magician. And he says that he is one. That's the thing.
But he is a real magician, right?
Yeah, he is a real magician. But but he believes that even though he doesn't have any actual magic to show for it, at the moment at least,
he's just a bad magician. He's just he's just a sort of slightly unformed magician.
Yeah. Oh, and here we get the hypie, or the booby bird, as people have called it, because I mean, obviously that sort of thing would never be seen in a Disney movie.
Yeah, for
It's
sure.
three-breasted bird. Well, I mean, why, whatever. But yeah, also, like, I like the fact that we have all these different, creatures that's really in this world really exist, and that actually are supposed to be immortal because they are.
It never struck me before, but the last unicorn's fake horn looks a bit like a lightsaber when it's glowing blue.
Yeah, no, that's true, actually.
Oh, when was the last time? Has it been a long time? I haven't seen this in probably 10, 15 years, if not longer. So it's striking me afresh. Put it that way.
Yeah. And here they all look at the unicorn, right? So some of them actually, I mean, and then we get this random woman that actually sees that she has two horns, and it's like, there are some people who do believe, but who are unable to sort of do anything about what the unicorn has to go through at the moment. And yeah.
So we should talk about the caged monster.
The harpy, you mean?
Yeah.
Yeah, because the
is it Celiano? Celia? Oh, I don't know how to pronounce it.
Selena.
Is that how you say it?
I think so. Yeah, I think it's harpy Selena.
Okay.
Which I mean, the witch caught when she was sleeping, and so she believes that she will, at some point that she will escape anyway, but and that she will likely kill her, but she accepts it sort of because she likes the idea of being able to restrain them.
But it's actually quite scary when you see the witch like casting the spells and the bars of the cage go kind of lightsaber blue, and the buzzard behind. I mean, it's a little bit Empire Strikes Back Emperor with it's for a kids' film. This is quite scary.
Because it's not like magic that is physically visible in a sense. It's just you see a bit of light, come forth and that sort of thing. But it's not like suddenly like a cage appears out of thin air or something like that. It's sort of much more invisible to the. I mean, it's
not little witches saying bibbidi bobbidi boo, is it?
Yeah, no, that's not it. That's not the kind of magic.
No wonder audiences were freaked out.
Yeah, and yeah, so the harpy. I mean, at least in the. I mean, in the book, it's also like this idea of fate and that sort of thing, because the witch actually believes that as I said, that she believes that she will be killed by the harpy in a sense, and that she's accepting of that. It says being accepting of death, and that's the kind of thing that you don't see in Disney films, because
no one ever really dies.
Well,
apart from Bambi's mom.
I mean, but acceptance of death on behalf of the person who is dying. I mean, it's not like you don't necessarily see someone like dying in their sleep or something like that, and then and being open to the idea of their life being over and that sort of thing. And the witch is surprisingly even-handed about it. She's really really she's accepted that she's going to die, and then she also tells the unicorn of the king.
But I think it's part of a wider film, isn't it? Like, in a sense, this is a film about accepting that in life there are trade-offs. Just being grown up about it. So the witch knows that if she wants to have the wondrous harpy as an exhibit, she has to accept the danger inherent in that. And like at the end, you have the unicorn accepting that with the human form came all this knowledge of mortality and all this evil, dark stuff, but also came love. And okay, it's nuanced. You can to get the one, you have to have the other. And I think, in that respect, it's a very grown-up film. Like
and regret as well.
Yeah,
because the witch doesn't regret what she has to give up in order to be able to call herself a witch, right? Because she's not. I mean, she's probably not a very powerful witch, even though she is a She is a witch because she can use magic, but at the same time, she's, her magic is not very, very elemental or something like that. She's not. I mean, and that's why. I mean, the feeling of being seen or perceived by others to be something that she's likely not.
Do you think
That's
she's
the
more
thing.
powerful than Schmendrick?
When Schmendrick, gets into the whole thing, I guess he is, probably a better magician. But it's just that because her magic is just illusion, and he says that she can't even turn cream into butter or something like that.
Yeah, because
right?
he can he does real magic, and
Yeah, but
and
he
I feel
doesn't
that
have.
in a way his story is one of learning self-belief. Like her magic may be limited, but she utterly owns it, believes it, accepts the consequences of it. Whereas he kind of starts out a bit goofy and kind of has to figure out kind of.
He's not. I mean, he's not really. I guess he's not used to using it that well, because he's also just part of the attraction. It's also sort of also dabbling into all the kind of trickery that is just illusion and not real.
Absolutely. Anyway, nonetheless, he's going to
Yeah,
help
and
the
he's
unicorn
trying to shrink
escape.
the cage now, trying to shrink the cage down by accident.
And burning his hands on the bars and just generally
Yeah.
being a little bit,
Oh,
yeah.
I had a burn just on my finger once, and that was really really bad. So it's like I can't imagine like burning your hands on.
Like he's such a moron. Like let me shrink the cage while the unicorn's still in it.
Yeah. Then we get the talking locket at the
Oh, I totally forgot about that. He's a bit like the Ron Weasley of magicians at this point.
yeah, with his broken wand.
Yeah, he needs Hermione to help him out, tell him what to
Yeah.
do.
And he just steals the keys. That's basically it. But
The talking lock is brilliant.
yeah, and so now there's also this idea like he's I guess oh sorry there's
No
a
worries.
wind in the background, so my door shut. But he's actually smarter than the other people around him here, but they mistreat him anyway.
He's
So the-
underestimated by everyone, including himself. So,
Yeah.
now we've got the evil henchman Rook sort of unimpressed by the fact that the poor unicorn's been released.
Yeah, and yeah, we get the freeing of the animals, right?
Mm-hmm.
Uh-huh. And
Oh, so
yeah.
so the key point here is that he frees the harpy by mistake. By
no,
mistake?
the unicorn frees the harpy.
Yeah. But the point is that the harpy is free.
And here we have like the ape and the snake escaping, right? Which is
Yeah.
and
God, I forgot that Rook and Spendrick really get into it in the fight.
yeah, they really.
Like he's like practically strangling him. No wonder parents were unamused at this.
Yeah, I mean it's but that's also what happened in the book. So it's
Yeah.
they
Cool.
they really
Soft slopes the monkey and the snake.
and there we have the harpy essentially
This is a
saying
really mean strangulation scene, dude.
yeah it is, and then he hits
I
him.
mean, it
with-
goes on and on.
Yeah, I mean that's because it's there has to be like with the
Like, I'm not saying it's bad, it's really tense, but again, I guess
It's-
it brings up the question of how far any of these Studio Ghibli films are really kids' films.
Yeah, I mean, I guess for me it's not a problem. Like to the idea that you can have grown up content in a children's film.
Oh, I agree.
That's-
I think
that's-
that's in a way that's part of what kids' films are for, aren't they? They're kind of to stretch the boundaries of what kids know, but in a safe way,
Yeah,
like to
and
show
so
them
now
danger. But yeah,
we have the harpy getting freed, right? I like the fact that the whole cage breaks into
it just splinters apart, doesn't it?
Yeah, it's and actually the harpy doesn't look like a harpy. It's usually described like with in the books. Usually, I mean, in the book she's described like traditional harpies are, but in the film she looks a bit different. Like because usually they are women, or hags, I guess I should say, with a bird body, in a.
I mean, the
old
harpy
wood
just looks a bit more like a buzzard at this point, right?
yeah, and obviously eats the witch.
Yeah.
Yeah, which is
This isn't going to end well. Oh, here come the claws.
Yeah.
It's like the evil alter ego of the eagles in Lord of the Rings.
Oh, that's true. Yeah,
But it
yeah.
is a bit of a fade to black, isn't it? It's like it's kind of weird how they show it. Like they show the back of the harpy, but you don't see her literally ripping the witch to shreds.
No, no, but you
But you
mentioned
know,
that's what's happening, right? So.
I mean, even this is pretty. I mean, it's pretty suggestive again
Mm.
for a kids' film.
And yeah, now she's turning around again in the air and trying to see, and then flies away.
Yeah.
So that's.
Oh,
And I
that's
like
so
that
grim.
the raven that the witch had actually survives this ordeal, and it's like following them around. But here we have like the unicorn.
The blood red
and
ringed
and it asks the unicorn like if she feels pity at all, or she says only sadness, but that's not the same thing. And I think those kinds of discussions are what make the film really great.
So is the concept here that because the unicorn is immortal, she finds it hard to get her head around the concept of death at this point?
Yeah,
So
part of that is linked to that. The other part is that because she's so removed from the normal circle of life that that other emotions that have to do with living, and the limit. I mean the limited span of life actually, not that well known to her, so to speak. That's why she's not. She doesn't. She says that she can't really. I mean, she only. I mean, she doesn't feel certain emotions. So that's that sort of thing. It's really. Then you ask yourself, what does she feel, and how does she perceive it, and that's.
I was going to say, so that brings up an interesting question, both with regards to unicorns and indeed elves, which is. What do they know of life? What is their understanding? What is their ability to have empathy with like sad human situations when they're so out of the norm?
That's why I feel like when we talk about the elves and Lord of the Rings, because we are doing a Silmarillion podcast at the moment on Vessels of Kingsgrave. We're sort of, I sort of always take the position like, there's a moment like in the story where the elves just, totally became really, really chilled people, because, when you look at the Silmarillion, it's not that pretty, to be honest. They are very much, yeah, they're very, very petty as well. And that's, at some point, I guess it's just, mellowed out.
The unicorn's not petty, but there is a sense in which she's somehow... I don't know. Psychopath, not psychopathic's the wrong word, but do you know what I mean? Like unfeeling. Yeah. Because it's just beyond the scope of her emotional range to know what this stuff is. So
yeah, she's not. I mean, that's why it's called human emotion. Like those are our emotions, like human emotions. Like she's a completely different being. So
maybe like in VOK, you guys are wrong to beat up on the elves because we can't blame them for being inhuman sometimes because they are inhuman. Like we can't look for normal emotion.
To me, it's always the idea that you can't, because they're not human, basically, and because they're sort of beyond the understanding of the human characters in the stories. It's difficult to make a judgment about what they feel and what they know and what they perceive and that sort of thing, because some things in life. I mean, I always take it like there are some things that you can't know, and that's for example the feelings of something that's ethereal is probably part of that as well. And
okay, so we should probably explain to people that Schmendrick's just being captured by some peasanty guys.
Yeah, by some brigands actually, because who are part of the band of Captain Cully, who in the book also fancies himself a poet and a singer, and he makes people constantly sing his songs that he created and that sort of thing, and they're mostly about himself because he doesn't like hearing about other brigands and that sort of thing, because it's like there's this constant idea of like his wife Molly grew always wants. I mean, she wants to hear about Robin Hood and that sort of thing, and then it's like, you're sort of being compared to another guy who doesn't even exist, and you're pale in comparison because you know that you're pathetic, and he doesn't want to have any of that, and he's so self-pitying at least in the book, that he doesn't realize that if he didn't actually become a brigand, he might actually be a good minstrel or a good poet. He might actually do something else in his life, but he's sort of made his life choice, so to speak, without knowing that it was probably the wrong one.
Okay, so here we're going to meet Molly Grew.
Yeah, Molly Grew, who is the only woman here in the scene. So it's
voiced by Tammy Grimes, who I'd never heard of actually, but
oh yeah, me. I have trouble remembering what she.
Apparently, she was married to Christopher Plummer.
Oh my!
I know. Let's see what else she was in. This is the Wikipedia description of her career. Known for a speaking voice that has been compared to a buzzsaw.
Oh my!
A lyric baritone, which is never good for a woman, a lyric baritone singing voice that one critic called a low throaty quiver, a hum that takes wings. And the stage personality of a daffy but endearing pseudo-English eccentric.
Oh my!
Oh my goodness, that's brilliant.
Those are really good descriptions, actually.
Yeah. Filmography. So she did The Last Unicorn. She did nothing else particularly famous.
She has a discography, actually, I guess.
I think she's more of a stage. She's a stage actress, right? Judging by.
She's been in. She has a filmography, and she has been in something that's called Arthur of 1969, and then The Borrowers of 1973. She was in that. And Can't Stop the Music in 1980, and then Mr. North in 1988, and Slaves of New York, Modern Affair, Trouble in Corner, and High Art. So that her last film was in 1998. So a while back.
Oh, this is interesting. Apparently, she says she was beaten up by white racists for basically appearing in public with Sammy Davis Jr.
Oh my!
That's ridiculous.
Yeah,
times we live in.
And because maybe we should talk about this scene, because Schmendrick is being asked to perform magic, and he's sort of called forth some spirits, some hallucinations, I guess, some illusions that represent Robin Hood and Maid Marian, and the merry men, and then all of Cully's men are leaving because they want to be with that guy.
Of course.
And
totally backfires.
Yeah, and Schmendrick is sort of like, he's so euphoric that he's performed real magic now, because he said, magic do as you will. So he actually doesn't force himself on the magic he's performing, but he's sort of letting it do whatever it needs to do. Is essentially is what I mean. It's like if you try to force something, it doesn't work, right? It's like you have to really let it go and be natural.
Yeah. And that's the lovely humility of Schmendrick, that he sees himself as like a channel for magic. Like he doesn't have the arrogance of a Saruman where he thinks he can shape things, and I think it just makes him really lovable.
Yeah, and then he's now tied to a tree. And he's
poor guy.
Tries to free himself, and the tree comes to life, as happens. And that's also really something that people harp on. Oh wow, he's sort of being smothered, in this tree, and that's sort of like, it looks like.
It's all a bit Tom Bombadillo, isn't it? Is the idea that Schmendrick is able to perform that magic because as you go through the enchanted forest, you I don't know.
Yeah, I don't necessarily recall. I guess it's more of a chance. It's more of like a chance thing with him at the moment. It's sometimes it works how he intends, and most of the time at the moment it doesn't really work out like he wants it to. But yeah, I'm not exactly sure. But I remember that the tree bit is also from the book. And yeah, the unicorn sort of steps in, and then he gets saved because apparently the magic gets annulled in some fashion. So it's
I mean, this is hilarious, right? Because you could interpret this as Schmendrick basically getting his face caught in the tits of a giant magic tree.
That's what I was saying. Which is really,
This would not happen in Disney.
No. But, that's why I like this film, because, I wish that more animated features were daring, in a sense. But that's why Japanese animation is in some ways more grown up, in my opinion, because they don't treat animated features like kids films. You can have an animated feature that talks to adults. And yeah, now we have the heart-wrenching scene between Molly Grew and the unicorn, because she says that, obviously she's been, like, in mythology, it's like unicorns get to visit young maidens and, are only capable of, they're the only ones who are capable of taming a unicorn, so to speak. And yeah, Molly has sort of been waiting for that moment to see a real unicorn all her life, and now she's old, and that's the moment when the unicorn, in her mind, decides to show up.
How old is she meant to be then? How old is she meant to be?
Oh, I think it's about 40, 50, maybe.
Really? Because she sort of looks the same age as Schmendrick.
Yeah, could be. But
then Schmendrick I always think of as being like a teenager, in a way.
Yeah, I always thought he was. I always took it that she was sort of an older woman, essentially. Like, not old, but 40 or something like that. And yeah, now essentially she's decided by her own volition to sort of join them, and Schmendrick sort of not trying to have anyone else compete with the unicorn's attention, apparently. And so it's like, yeah, but she doesn't take him seriously at all, which is actually, something that I guess that he needs, someone who tries to keep him down and, keep him down to earth without, being destructive in their criticism. And so, yeah, it gives him a chance to prove himself as well. And yeah, obviously she tells him they were going in the wrong direction. So
yeah, I think she's brilliant because he's like a little bit incompetent, and the unicorn is otherworldly, and you almost need Molly Grew. You need this very kind of earthy, practical woman as a kind of a way into the film, in a way, because you just need that.
She's the average person because Schmendrick is a wizard. The unicorn is a unicorn, right? So it's you don't have anyone who represents the audience.
Yeah, you need the Ron Weasley. You need the Sam.
Yeah,
the slightly dishevelled.
And we get another song.
Sam, in fact, in both Game of Thrones and in Lord of the Rings.
Oh yeah. But I have my theories about Sam in A Song of Ice and Fire.
Really, what's your theory?
That he's sort of. I guess I should say that he's probably Azor Ahai, because it's the idea is that Gilly might be his Nissa Nissa.
You think that Sam is Azor Ahai?
I could see that, because he's the guy who's sort of not proven himself yet. Really, who's not proven himself to his father, for instance. I would say that's the thing. I'd say that's the typical story structure. Like, you have the father who underestimates the son, and the son then tries to, the son sort of proves himself to the father in a way, that sort of thing. And him and Gilly are sort of the only couple who are developed in a way that shows true love in the books.
Oh my goodness, I'm googling this right now. Is Sam Azor Ahai?
No, it's just a theory that lots of people could be Azor Ahai. It's just one possibility that I don't exclude. Let's say it like that.
I'm on Westeros right now.
And now we get the Red Bull attack, which is really impressive, because in the book
it's really evil.
Yeah. Although in the book it's sort of meant to. You're sort of meant to take away that the bull is blind, which is why he has white eyes here, and he's sort of only able to sort of sense the unicorn, and doesn't actually try to hurt her because he wants to drive into to another place.
What's the Red Bull's motive?
Actually, it's just to do what Haggard does, what Haggard wants him to do, which is to gather the unicorns.
It just seems like a totally disproportionate, like, evil red man.
No, but at the same time, there's like something that Schmendrick mentioned earlier in the film here as well. It's like there's no, they don't know if the bull actually keeps Haggard imprisoned in his fortress. If he's the servant of the king or something. It's like a relationship that we don't really know about. We don't really know what degree of power one has over the other. That's the thing.
But the Red Bull is like 20 times the size of Last Unicorn.
Yeah, the Red Bull seems like this kind of demon-like figure that you would say. I mean, it's like the idea of maybe you make a deal with the devil, and that sort of thing, and then the devil grants you your wish. But at the same time, like it's like at least in the book, there's a whole section of there's a village near the castle which is cursed.
Okay.
And so yeah,
the use of color here is amazing. Color and music. I mean, this is truly petrifying.
Yeah.
The sort of acid pinks. I mean, it's a very non-Disney palette.
Yes.
We shouldn't keep referring to Disney, really, because it's not the benchmark. No, but do you know what I mean? It's just like thinking of audiences at the time. And actually audiences, if they now discover this, mind blown.
Yeah. Audiences today, I have sort of the unpopular opinion that, most mainstream animated features have become less sophisticated. Because it's just either it's really about it's really topical in a way that reflects a popular debate, a popular political debate. Like there are people who say Frozen is about acceptance of LGBT, that sort of thing.
Okay.
And there are people who, might say, for example, WALL-E is about environmental messages and that sort of thing, where it's really, distilled to one central element, right? And that's sort of what the films sometimes feel like to me. And so when I watch this film, I see like a lot of things that are brought up, but that you have to reflect about once you finish the film. So it's like it's not taking one thing and only looking at that one thing.
No, you're right. It's very realistic.
That's why I think it's that's such. But I think that's how it should be, because films shouldn't actually tell you what to think and what to feel and that sort of thing. They should leave you the possibility of thinking about what you've seen and interpreting it in different ways, and finding different subjects and topics to talk about.
Oh, so here we get Daenerys Targaryen.
Yeah. Dany. Oh yeah.
It looks so Dany, right? Even the kind of like the violet eyelashes / eyes, silver hair.
Yeah.
Butt naked for most of it. I mean,
Martin watched this film when he should Deagle sue for plagiarism. I don't know. No,
I find it hard to believe that George R. R. Martin wouldn't have read the book, at least, because he just loves fantasy. He's a voracious reader.
But I guess he's said that he prefers sci-fi as well, doesn't he?
Oh, okay. So
I'm
you
not
think
sure.
he doesn't read much?
Or maybe he prefers to write sci-fi. I'm not sure. I've read it somewhere. Maybe it's maybe it's unsubstantiated. But yeah, so we sort of get the idea that the magic chose to make her into a woman because that's the only way that she can approach the castle. Because otherwise she has no chance of finding the unicorns again. But she is deeply unhappy about it because she feels that the body that she's in is dying, and that's something that she's not used to.
You could also see it as an analogy to puberty as well.
Oh, maybe as well.
I think it's really well done, actually. Like, she tries to stand on her 2 feet. She feels really unsteady. She falls again. Not falls, but she then, like, comes back to the ground. I think the way in which, like, she lifts up her hand, she's looking at her hand, she's kind of feeling her. It's so beautifully done. I mean, it's like, it's well acted, if you can call it sort of. And then it's just beautifully animated.
Real movement.
And just how you'd imagine it would be. Yeah. And then, maybe we should talk about Mia Farrow, who voices the unicorn.
Oh, yeah. Because you might know more about Mia Farrow than I do.
Mia Farrow, or what can you say? Child bride of Frank Sinatra, longtime partner of Woody Allen. And Rosemary's Baby. Always played waifs, right? Always played troubled waifs. So I suppose this is very in that vein of Rosemary's Baby.
Rosemary's Baby. Oh, that's it. Yeah, that's the one that I remember her most clearly from. And when I look when I looked who actually spoke the unicorn in the English version, I was surprised that it was her because I didn't expect, big actors like that to do, that's what we said at the beginning, right? That there are lots of big name actors here.
In fairness, in 1982, would she still have been a big name actor? I mean, like Rosemary's Baby was a long time. Let's just Google her discography.
But she's done a lot of stuff afterwards, right? She's done See No Evil on 71.
Oh, so this is in the period where, so she's done, she did See No Evil. This is like, Rosemary's Baby was 68, Gatsby 74, I suppose, is the height of her
The Purple Rose
glamour. But yeah, she hadn't quite, I wonder if she's quite met Woody Allen yet, because the first Woody Allen film is Selig in 83. And then you get into that run of Purple Broadway Down Rose, New York Stories, Crimes and Misdemeanors, Shadows and Fog. So I wonder if this is maybe in a period when she wasn't quite as in the public eye.
Supergirl.
Was she in Supergirl?
Yeah, she was Allura in Z. I have no idea.
Supergirl is such a brilliant film.
I've never seen Supergirl, but I've heard it's such a bad film.
It's a cheesy camp classic. I personally love it. It's got Peter O'Toole in it as well. It's got Peter Cook in it. It's also got Faye Dunaway as the evil baddie, who is just brilliant. I would strongly recommend seeing Supergirl.
But apparently she's been active until 2011, like when she made the film called Dark Horse. So she's actually been active until fairly recently.
Dark Horse is just such a messed up film. It's Todd Solondz, right? So that's just creepy.
And then we get the wonderful Christopher Lee as King Haggard, who I think the author said that he actually, once he had delved into the character in the book and his reasonings and that sort of thing, he couldn't actually make him a villain. He sort of felt like that he recognized some of himself in the character in a way that is sort of the idea being that you're never happy and sort of really a depressed existence.
Is Haggard a bit like Denethor? No.
I'd say, I could see the parallels.
It's just seeing him sitting there looking on his throne.
But then there are others that are very dissimilar because Denethor in the end comes through for his son, whereas Haggard in the film admittedly says that he doesn't. He cared for Lear when he found him, but after a while, that sort of feeling of happiness sort of subsided, and now it's sort of not. He doesn't really care. That's the thing. He doesn't care about anything.
It's a miserable existence, right? Like, he's king, but he's living in... according to you in the book, the village is under enchantment, which makes sense, because there's no one in this flipping castle.
Yeah, it's cursed in a way that, it's something also having to do with unhappiness and that sort of thing. It's something to do with the idea of I guess it's sadness or something,
or depression, even.
Yeah, it's not. It's also sort of a prophecy-like curse, sort of, and you're meant to understand that Lear is sort of meant to break the curse, but that never comes up in the film. So it's they left that element out of the film because it leads to a bit of an awkward ending between the villagers and Lear when he sort of tells them that he's the one that they've been waiting for, and they are actually pretty happy with their curse. That's the thing. They actually say, well, we're cursed, and then but they don't want to lift it because they've,
which is a very good parable of depression, right?
They're not happy in their lives, but they're sort of like they are really they sort of perceive that this is a very good existence in a way, being sort of happy in your misery. That's what it is. And so at the same time they know that they're cursed, but they don't want to lift it. And he in the end sort of comes through and tells them no, you have to leave now. And I because the castle is gone, and that's part of the curse, because apparently it was built by a witch, which and
any significance to the name Amalthea?
Amalthea. I don't No, I don't remember. I might have to look it up, but it's
Amalthea is the third moon of Jupiter,
okay.
and named after Amalthea, a nymph in Greek mythology.
I mean, yeah, she looks very. I mean, and obviously, she looks very much like a. Yeah, like a. I mean, she's a supernatural being, and she's looking like a woman. So I couldn't see why that name would be.
Oh, here you go. Amalthea was the foster mother of Zeus, sometimes represented as the goat who suckled the infant god in a cave. So if you're right about unicorns being more like a goat.
Yeah, and then we have narwhals here as well in the images, like in the sea and that sort of thing. It's like really a lot of influences. And there's the crow again, still there. But I think there's obviously a bit of a montage, if you can call it that, right? Where you see,
So 80s, even in this film, nothing's complete without either an action or a romance montage.
And then he kills the dragon, like Lear kills the dragon, and that's sad because
that's how to win any girl's heart.
Yeah, and it's not just that; it's because he kills the thing for as he realizes there's no real reason. Like he kills it because he wants to impress her, and she isn't impressed, and so that makes him realize that what it was actually pretty senseless. And we're meant to also understand that she's not impressed with him in any way. She doesn't really, she's really awkward around other people, is what I'm saying. But there are not that many people in the castle anyway. Just a couple of guards and Haggard and his son. So it's or his adoptive son, should we say? And
the crow's massive. The crow's bigger than Molly Grew.
Yeah. Oh my!
I actually really like this particular song. I'd love to have this on DVD, CD or something.
And there's the pirate cat as well, which I always find very interesting. It's like why is the cat with a wooden foot, and then it's like
I think the dragon is really when you see that this has been animated by people who aren't in Europe, because it's a very Asian-looking dragon rather than the sort of scaly George and the Dragon. It looks very Chinese.
Yeah, and usually, Asian dragon. Dragons in Asian mythologies are more peaceful. Actually, they are much more tied to rivers and elements of the earth and that sort of thing. So
the way he brings on the head of a dragon, she's like so unimpressed.
Yeah, that's essentially the gist of it. It's like she doesn't, she doesn't react to him at all. And
I want it to be on record that if any man ever brings me the head of a dragon, I will be impressed.
Yeah, maybe if someone brings you the head of Danny's dragons, I don't know.
And poor Schmendrick just as a sort of court jester dancing around to please King Haggard with no effect.
That's also something which I see. But he's also not impressed. So it's like on all fronts, there's no
people are being unimpressed. He reminds me a little bit of Pippin singing for Denethor. Just these empty halls of empty castles, empty to people, and it's just pathetic and barren. I mean, what's the point of being a prince like Prince Lear if you have to peel your own potatoes?
Yeah, that's essentially, it's about. I guess it's meant to signify that there is no real point in that sort of. In those sorts of titles, if there's no actual court around to sort of make you king, right? If you're a king of nothing, then you are still no. I mean, it's not a real king. Because who is going to follow your commands or your orders or whatever? It's like you just just made yourself into one, for example, right? You're
exactly. In the land of no people, being a king is pointless. Like there's no hierarchy. It's you need a people to rule to kind of make you credible as a king, and this is just basically
And I also like the fact that he does. I mean. He actually asks for advice on how to approach her, because usually what what you get in those kinds of stories is that, the guy just tries by himself. The guy doesn't need any help. He just tries a different approach or something by himself without ever having to ask someone what they think. And, it's just like, oh yeah, well, he just figured it out at some point. No, some people don't figure it out. Some people actually, go around asking for help, and that's also totally acceptable. But it's just because his love goes unrequited at the moment. When here's the thing, that there's a song that Mia Farrow sings here, which I know is, people don't like it.
Why?
Because they say that she can't. If once the song is concluded, you might say she doesn't have the best singing voice.
Yeah, but I think that's fine. I think that in a way, her not having the best singing voice actually makes it a more moving song, because it just feels real.
Yeah.
Like, you don't want this kind of full-throated, Broadway style singing. You want like a young, fragile, very vulnerable girl with this faltering voice. To me, is far more sad. What happens in the German version, like in the dubbed version? Do they have someone proper singing it?
Oh, there's the Mia Farrow singing in the background, but there is like an inner monologue, dubbed in German, like where we get her thoughts and her, what she thinks, essentially, sort of spoken, not sung. So it's like you have the song in the background. It's like music.
Okay.
In the foreground there's someone talking, and that makes it probably a bit different in a sense, because it's not like a song in that way. Yeah, we missed the part where there's actually the same tapestry in one of the rooms that was there at the beginning when we had the intro song. Because I saw the two lions there, in one of the tapestries on the walls, and so lots of iconography that's medieval, and you have to think that someone drew that in an animated film, which you might have to be really skillful to do that kind of replica. And now Molly discovers that the bull goes out every night to chase the unicorn, and the cat begins to talk. And in the book, actually, it's also like he talks, but he's if I recall, he says he talks only once or something, and he doesn't really know why, essentially.
So the cat
he talks he talks a certain amount, and then at some point he doesn't talk anymore. And she might ask him something, but he doesn't.
Oh my god! The guy who voiced the cat is the guy who did the voice for Scooby-Doo.
Oh wow! That's awesome. Actually, does he?
He also did Muttley in the Wacky Races. Sebastian the Cat and Josie and the Pussycats. He did Gears, Ratchet and Scavenger and the Transformers. Papa Smurf and the Smurfs.
Oh, nice.
So he did this guy called Don Messick. Yeah, a lot of the Hanna-Barbera stuff, which I loved. Wacky Race is like one of the all-time best.
He's the reason why. That's one reason why I think cats are so interesting to me, because I'm more of a cat person instead of a dog person.
Oh, okay, I'm a dog person.
Oh yeah, but
I don't mind cats though.
To me, it's just because there's something to a cat like this one, for example, here that's like really deliberately mysterious, and deliberately not telling everything up front. A real cat you don't really know how to feel when they're around sometimes. Like they just sometimes they just look at you and you don't really know what they're what they're feeling, or what they might be thinking.
Yeah, they're slippery little.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And now, Schmendrick has to perform in the cold outside, and Haggard being obviously enjoying his own sense of humiliation of Schmendrick. And yeah, it's also the idea that Schmendrick is only trying to distract Haggard from Amalthea in a way. Oh yeah, Lear also writes a lot of poetry apparently. So it's
in between like peeling the potatoes and killing dragons.
Yeah, he's like
I sort of feel like if you didn't if she didn't respond to you like chopping off the head of a dragon, the poetry is definitely not going to work. Like the poetry would have come before the killing of dragons. Yeah. I feel.
But what I think is in the book, from what I recall, because it's been a while, I think his love for her made him daring in a way. It made him do all these great heroic deeds where before he wasn't actually doing any of that.
Because he's not actually a prince, right? He's an adopted prince.
Mm-hmm. So. And so he actually became a hero in order to
win her
heart. Yeah, which is a very old-fashioned kind of idea of romantic love, I guess.
It's ennobling.
Yeah,
and uplifting.
Yeah, you try to better yourself, to be with the person that you love, right? And so he tries to be the best he can be, but it's never good enough. And yeah, I just also I love the attention to detail. When you have on the paper, like you have these little decorations on the on the sheets and that sort of thing. It's
the attention to detail in the backgrounds is amazing, and like the dragon statue on the left.
Yeah, that's
beautiful. But the fact that his the notepaper on which he writes the poetry is already embossed with the flower. I mean, it's just stunning. It's really beautiful.
And now Jeff Bridges gets to sing.
Yeah, Jeff Bridges, the dude abides.
The dude abides. Yeah.
And he sees. I mean, it's very Tolkien. It's very Arwen, sort of.
Yeah.
In a way, this actually is a little bit like Faramir, my personal favorite, and Éowyn, and Houses of Healing.
No, I can see where you would see that, because it's like these two people who are at first who don't really know how to feel about each other.
Or he certainly warms to her first, and I think that's very true. Éowyn has a sort of, she's just not interested for all sorts of reasons, and then we have this little sequence where they sort of symbolically are made into birds and it's flying off together. Oh, it's so cute, the little love birds, quite literally.
And then in the water, then you see a unicorn.
And it's kind of freaky in a way, because we've been in this like dark world for so long that to get the green color palette to fertility and love is just very. It's actually a nice rest for the eyes after all that gloom. Yeah,
and it's like it also once again makes you question, like, why would someone take these creatures out of that environment to put them somewhere else?
But it's interesting that even in this love song, she's seeing the unicorn and being sort of pulled away from love. Yeah. Like that choice between being an immortal unicorn and being in love.
And she progressively forgets that she is a unicorn. That's the thing. She doesn't recall actually being a unicorn at some point.
Which I think makes it far more interesting than the whole Arwen thing.
Yeah.
Like Arwen has a clear choice. You can be an elf, or you can give up your immortality and be with Aragorn. And in a way, it's just a very sort of simple, self-aware choice. Whereas with her, it's much more about the boundaries of her personality just dissolving.
Yeah.
Which is more scary, or to me is one of the more scary things about love as a bit of a control freak, is that you, like, not in the extreme way here, but you do sometimes just feel yourself dissolving a little bit, like the boundaries of your personality, because, it's one of the classic things about love.
And here we have, like, the freaky clock, which is also really something, that kind of stuff you would want to have in your house somewhere.
Which again is a little bit Beauty and the Beast, but in a sort of evil.
And here we have Haggard talking to Amalthea, because he sort of tries to discover what she's about, and but I guess he tells her that he's discovered who she is, But yeah, he also explains here that he found Leah on his doorstep.
Oh my God.
And
Sorry to interrupt. The guy who plays the clock is René Auberjonois, who played Father Mulcahy in the film version of MASH, which is awesome.
Oh, right.
He also played Chef Louis in The Little Mermaid.
Oh, nice.
And he also played, for anyone who remembers Benson, the old cheesy TV series, Clayton Endicott III. But Odo on Star Trek Deep Space Nine. So he's on lots of stuff.
Wow.
But yeah, Little Mermaid.
And here we have Haggard essentially saying that he knows her, that he knows Amathea. Which is also something which is like, knowing someone, what does it take to know someone? And how can you ever be sure that you know someone else?
But also that massive invasion of space, the way he grabs his shoulders, it's like super creepy.
Yeah. And also, like, he's always constantly tugging at his beard and that sort of thing.
Yeah, no, not pleasant.
Yeah.
How would you compare the Amalthea story of Unicorn into Woman to the Mermaid? And the choice between being a mermaid and love?
Well, she gets to talk. The Little Mermaid doesn't get to talk in the film. Which is sad because, she gets to talk up until she becomes a human being. At that point, she loses her voice. And she sort of has to communicate through sign language and that sort of, and it's sometimes it's a bit sad that there isn't any possibility to have any dialogue, because essentially the character then just becomes I don't know. It seems really strange to me that yeah, it looks like. I mean, if you were cynical, you might say, well, they didn't have to pay the actress more than they needed to. It's but yeah. I mean, I like The Little Mermaid fine. It's not my favorite one, but it's I like it a lot, mainly because of the music and the animation and that sort of thing.
Yeah.
But the story in itself is a bit, it's obviously it's not at all what the original story was, because in the original story, obviously she, her, every step hurts.
Oh, it's like walking on razors, right? I mean, it's a really, gruesome story.
In the end, she doesn't get the human that she loves, and that's that might be actually a more grown up, story. But I can understand why Disney didn't want to tell that story, because doesn't she also die in the end? I don't know. But yeah, I mean, I prefer this because it has more to do. I mean, it has more of a philosophical implication. The character is much more at the center of all these questions that have to do with self-discovery and regret and all that. And I like the fact that we got the scene here with King Haggard where he actually shows his one moment of humanity, right? Where he's sort of really reminiscing about his happiness, and that he couldn't be happy knowing that there was something out there that that gave him so much joy, which he couldn't have. And so it's like, yeah, it's a really understandable motivation. Like, you want to, how can you tell someone, to be unhappy for their entire life if, the one thing that makes them happy is, a living creature, essentially, where,
yeah, exactly.
If you might, yeah, then you might have to, then he might have to sacrifice his happiness. If he wanted to do the right thing, then he might, have to sacrifice his happiness and essentially, the purpose of living, actually, in a sense, because then if life is just one big bore or one big sadness, then there's a real issue involved here. I guess that's what I'm saying. It's
to me, it's the trade-off of where does an individual's right to happiness or self-determination.
Yeah.
What's the boundary? Like, where do you allow that to impinge upon somebody else? Like, at what price? Yeah. It's the kind of the John Stuart Mill sort of, you can have anything you want as long as you do no harm to anyone else, like the harm principle. And then here it's in action completely.
It's also what most anarchists believe, it's like your freedom ends at the freedom of another person. So, that's why you can't have anyone impose their will on others.
You may be interested to know, given this whole kind of, or one of the reasons I'm guessing that we both prefer this to like Disney type things is that it's not as cleaned up and sanitized as some.
Yeah. You see that especially with the skeleton here, right?
So I just got this amazing book given to me, which is a translation, but you wouldn't even need a translation, of the original Brother Grimm fairy tales. So like the first edition that they published in 1812 and 1815 before Wilhelm started cleaning it all up and making it a bit more palatable. And it's really, really, I mean, in English it's just brilliantly translated, but they've got these amazing new illustrations by this guy. I'd never heard of him before, called Andrea Descho. But anyway, I would really recommend reading it because yeah, it's gruesome.
Yeah, I mean,
but it's gruesome, but it's also it has a beauty and a purity in there as well, and the illustrations, very much like what you love here, like the tapestry and the woodcuts and that kind of imitating that beautiful medieval high illustration.
And I guess what I like about those kinds of stories is that they are not representative of the not necessarily representative of a moral consensus. They are sort of happy to demonstrate a moral vacuum, a place of moral vacuum where essentially, one action leads to something else, and it doesn't matter that whether or not it's amoral or moral is part of the story itself. Like, it's not something that that it's not like the protagonist of those stories has to be the person who is morally right in the end.
Yeah, for sure. There is often not justice. There is, and obviously because the original stories were just a collection from everywhere.
Yeah. So
they have very different perspectives. Like, even if they were moral, the moral would change, and because they're coming from very different cultures. And it's before, I think this first edition, what really struck me compared, because I've got later editions. What really struck me is in later editions, you definitely feel that the Grimm brothers are trying to create a German heritage, and so they're pruning out stories that might have come from other sources, and whereas this just feels much more disparate. And also, like, there's less of that editorializing, sort of creating the once upon a time kind of formats. So even just the narrative voices are very different.
Yeah.
So it, like, the original is kind of like Vogue; it's all over the place. Whereas the later ones are more streamlined and have a greater unity of tone. So yeah, I would really strongly recommend it. The English version is translated by a guy called Jack Zips, Zips, but the illustrations are it's got to be worth it just from that.
And we missed the part with the skeleton.
Sorry, that's me getting excited about the Grimm brothers fairy tale.
Yeah, but that's all right. I mean, the skeleton is funny, but I mean, it's not like it's probably just something to do with memory. That's because he asked for wine to tell them what to do. And
but again, like, cool that like we have a talking boozy skeleton as a major character.
Whose eyes glow red when he gets angry.
Yeah.
It's like really freaky, that sort of thing.
But he just sits atop that mantelpiece looking really half cut, doesn't he? He looks like he's a complete drunken lech.
I think in the book he also apologizes for ratting them out, but he feels like he has to do it because he's like the god of the clock and that sort of thing. So
he's in some way still keeping up his old.
It's like the idea that he's sort of like, it's sort of my duty to. I mean, I'm sorry, but that's what that's what I do. So it's no.
I should say that actually René Auberjonois, is actually, he voices this guy, the skeleton, not the clock.
No. The clock has no. I mean, but yeah, now we get Haggart's Schmendrick, sorry, and Lear coming to join the others on the other side of the clock.
Yeah, it's not good.
Yeah. And that's also something he I mean, when they talk about, like, they talk about their love, and then somebody says that's not the most important thing right now, and I agree, because it's.
God, you know what? Haggard just reminded me of Balin Greyjoy.
Oh yeah, that's the thing. In the book, he has this long. In the book, he has this long white beard as well, doesn't he?
Yeah.
Oh
no, Schmendrick.
Yeah,
it's a pretty incompetent swordplay there from Haggard, actually.
Yeah,
he doesn't look like he knows how to handle a sword.
And then he sort of destroys the clock, which is their only way out, except for the.
So when they go through to the other side in this green misty stuff, where are they?
They are on the other side of the clock, which is in the lair of the Red Bull.
Which is just this like mythical green...
The cave beneath the fortress.
Oh, okay.
And it's like really like freaky and stuff. And it's
yeah, because the whole of the film isn't already freaky.
Yeah, but no, this is. I mean, but here they also there's a lot of talking about dreams, and that's in the book as well. I guess is what it's.
I mean, this feels like an alternate dimension, right? It's so weird. This green.
Yeah.
Fog.
Singy. Yeah, it's really. I mean, it's like a space in between spaces, maybe.
I mean, why does he keep on like slashing at the clock and killing the clock?
Because they could come out back. They could come back out again on that side. So he wants to trap them downstairs.
Oh, now it becomes a cave. Okay, I'm remembering this now.
Yeah, and so now they're going through the
underground layer.
Underground layer, yeah. And yeah,
I notice how Prince Lear just lets her lead the way. That's not very chivalrous.
Yeah, he's a
he's a modern man. He's like, whatevs. Be feminist if you want to.
he's just letting her,
do her thing.
He's just respectful. And and he actually says now. I mean, because at this point he's in the book also he's a real hero, so he doesn't actually have to fear any of these magical creatures or anything. And he loves who he loves, and that sort of thing. And it's like, okay, this is a conflict of two goods, right? It's like you can have love on one hand, but then there's the fact that these beings are being trapped forever if that happens, right? Mm-hmm. So which one? I mean, which one does the hero choose? The hero usually makes the choice that is selfless, right? Which in this case would be to give up his happiness. Which I mean, in the book he also manages to do, but still he regrets it. I mean, that doesn't mean just because he makes the right choice that he has to be happy with that choice. And yeah, so now that's also there's this whole question of like he does these big deeds, like he slays giants and that sort of thing, and then dragons and that kind of stuff, and he's not. I mean, he doesn't necessarily feel like a real hero, I guess is what I'm saying. And so until he makes this choice, I think he has only done the superficial stuff and not really done made the big decision. And yeah, now Molly is sort of talking about leaving her like this because she wants her to be happy and that sort of thing. And it's like all these different questions. And it's once again, I really find that you can come down on different sides on this, right? You can see where everyone is coming from, which is rare. Because most of the time it's framed in a way in which one person is right and the other person is wrong, and then that's. But you can see that both these things have value in and of themselves. And yeah, here we have the Red Bull appearing again,
being like totally badass. Can you remember the first time you watched this? Like the whole thing about like whether she'll choose to stay with the prince or go back to being unicorn. Did you ever? What did you think she was going to do at this point? If she escapes.
If she escapes, you mean as a human being?
Like, yeah, no, but like the first time you watched it, did you think she was going to stay as a human, like, or did you think she was going to go back to being a human?
I was taught, by my earlier experience with animated features that she was probably going to, marry the prince and that sort of thing. And
exactly, right? I very strongly remember the first time I watched this.
But yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, it was. Like this scene where he's like fighting the Red Bull with a sword and she's like the damsel in distress, to me was just like out of Sleeping Beauty when the prince fights the dragon, and it just Yeah, it just overturned everything I thought about how fairy stories end, to which I'm forever grateful, or for which I'm.
Now Smenrig is turning her back into a unicorn, and there goes love, out the window, out the cave, and yeah, now they're on the beach here. So I guess that, I mean, there's also the idea of the bull is, I guess, only as is not as powerful, I guess, when she finds her own courage, because I guess it's also part to do with I think maybe if I remember it wrong, but I always got the impression that it was about, the bull takes his strength from, fear and that sort of thing. So it's like, when someone finds their own courage, then the bull is partly countered in a way.
So you think the bull is sort of necessary because it's a coming of age story, not just for her but for him as the prince.
Yeah,
like he has to realize how he has to man up and be courageous. And
I think that would be the literary function of the Red Bull here, because the Red Bull is not really. I mean, he's an antagonistic force, but I don't think that the Red Bull has actually. He doesn't exhibit any sort of intelligence that would make you think, oh yeah, he's an evil creature.
Yeah, no, he's just husk. He's just bulk, right? I mean, that's all.
He's like, he's in the book. They find out that he's blind, and so he doesn't really see. And that's like, yeah, I mean, it's just a creature that you don't really know a lot about, and. It's at the same time it's like it has a weak point as well. It's not really invincible or anything. It only looks that way at the beginning, and then later it turns out it's not. So again, appearances versus what's actually there.
I also like the fact that in the animation they don't make the unicorn seem bigger in her age. Like she just drives the Red Bull into the sea in her own size, even though he's massively bigger.
Yeah, that's it, because it's it's the idea of that you might be small, but still.
Anyway, this scene is lovely.
When they all come out of the sea, like they look like they're part of the waves, and then they sort of come out of that and trample down the whole castle.
And I think anyone who's seen the iconic ad for Guinness, it was a 1999 ad where it's black and white and it's for Guinness, and you have the horses surf like over the sea, knows where that's been ripped off from.
Yeah.
I mean, they say it's inspired by Walter Crane's 1893 painting Neptune's Horses, but it's not. It's definitely inspired by the scene. It's just like the coolest. Wow. The stampede of the unicorns is so powerful, and it kills the disgusting castle in Haggard as well. Yeah.
Which, he dies knowing at least that he was right, so that's, one thing, but it's...
Plunging to the depths of the sea.
Yeah.
Which is all a bit Denethor. I do find that bit where he plunges off the tower very...
Yeah, but that's in the film only, right? In the book...
I haven't read the book, but yeah. I'm now going to do it, though. I'm going to order it and then read it. I just forgot how much I love this film, actually, watching it again. It's a really great film. Oh.
And she brings him back to life.
Everyone's sad.
He also says like he was dead, right? It's like also, I mean, in the at least in the book when he comes back, he's sort of a bit. I mean, once she leaves, he's a bit warier. Let's say he doesn't. He would prefer to be together with her in some way, but he can't. So that's the thing.
They're both grown up, right? They both realise you can't always have what you want, and love isn't sometimes enough.
Yeah.
Is that true, though? Is that meant to be one of the mythical powers of the unicorn, that they can bring people to life?
Yeah.
So
I'm not sure, but I suppose it's. I mean, we have lots of unicorns in fiction as well, like in Harry Potter, where they sort of their blood sort of is meant to grant everlasting life and that sort of thing.
Yeah. Oh, Cena's so sad.
Yeah, and that's a where they leave part of the book plot out with the curse and that thing.
Yeah.
But
I love the idea that this is a very compromised ending. That kind of like the baddie, the Red Bull is dead, and like all sorts of things have been set to right. But fundamentally, it's very bittersweet and very melancholy because the two lovers aren't together, and they're older and wiser.
And she has learned regret.
Yeah.
Because she's the only unicorn who knows regret, which is fairly interesting as a concept. Because you don't really see that. Because in most films, like, people don't actually regret the choices that they make. They make choices, and sometimes they say, I have to make a tough choice, but it's a necessary choice. But you never actually, you rarely see people actually expressing that they regret making a decision that was essential in the film story or something, right? Mm-hmm. It's because that would be admitting that partly you've made bad decisions in your life, and you're just sort of looking back and putting everything into question again. And that's something where doubt comes in as well, which I think it's those are all very, very interesting concepts, and just because they're not fully explored and rather mentioned here and there in the film doesn't mean that it's not food for thought.
Yeah.
And now
it's a wise film, isn't it? I don't think there's not many other animated children's films you can watch and say that there's a certain wisdom to them.
Yeah, that's why I mean, people say, well, oh yeah, people today only look back on this film positively because of nostalgia, and I just
no,
I share that perception of it, because it's very it's very unique because of its maturity, I guess, is what I'm saying. So it's
I agree. And it's beautifully animated. It has a real sense of history and historical design, which I love. I think I guess the score could be seen as quite 80s in the way that the Princess Bride score is quite 80s, but it's really affecting, and I've really enjoyed that, actually. I think it's beautiful.
Yeah, and what I find it interesting is that you sort of get the last images of the forest, but with no characters in them. Mm. So
Studio Ghibli, the nature and Earth always are the winners. I would much rather have children watch this and the more ambiguous and nuanced ending, more grown-up ending than Disney any day of the week.
Yeah, I like Disney. Let's not. I
love Disney too, right?
Yeah, but it's because it's just that when you have such a big conglomerate like Disney, I always root for the more independent. It's easier for me to root for the underdog than it is for the big studio that already has a lot of recognition
and the world is big enough for both, right? It can absorb both styles. It's
just sad that it's this is at least it shows that 2D animation is capable of a lot of great things, and we've sort of transitioned into 3D animation for most animated features, I guess. Studio Ghibli was one of the few ones that still had hand-drawn animation, even though they also later included a lot of some CG as well. But it was, from what I remember, it wasn't noticeable to the extent, that you see in a lot of anime, for example, that sort of thing. And yeah, to me, it's just like, it's sad that we don't have more 2D animation left today.
Do you like the animation of Michel Oslo?
Oh,
Les Contes de la Nuit.
I think I've heard something about.
He also did Azur at Asmar, Kiriko and the Sorcerer.
Oh yes.
I think because I just feel that might be very much up your street.
Yeah. Those kinds of, that kind of animation, like especially because I watched Kiriko when I was younger. That kind of animation I really enjoy as well, because it's it's not just the same style. Because now when I look at DreamWorks and when I look at Disney animation and Pixar, they all seem to sort of blend together at some point in my mind, like in a way that, because CG doesn't really have Bina?
Yeah, I'm here.
Oh yeah, because I think I heard someone no, but to me it's like the idea of all these animation studios they're not copying each other, but they're sort of competing with each other for a place in the for marketplace.
Yeah, and apart from, like Disney, Pixar, same company now, so of course there's going to be a leaking of style into one another, and it makes me sad that in a way that other studios haven't really risen up to challenge them. It just feels like a real monopoly over the style of what we see, and therefore, like you, I just think anything you can do. The problem is that a lot of the other independent stuff isn't native English language. And sadly, because of the economics of filmmaking and cultural sensibility, it just means it's probably not going to get as wide an audience. But so we should probably draw this to a close. I have but thank you so much for suggesting The Last Unicorn. That was amazing. I really loved it.
I hope so. I wasn't sure because some people might not. If they haven't watched it, they might say, "Well, this is maybe a bit pedestrian in terms of quality or something." Because it stays very close to the book. But yeah, it some of it, like the language, etc. You have to experience it as a book as well, I guess is what I'm saying, because I first watched the movie and then came to the book.
Okay, well, so, I will read the book and let you know, but I just feel that it's I think you're right. It's not just a nostalgia watch. It's got real depth of content and emotion, and and it's beautiful.
So maybe if you're melancholic one day, you might look back at this film and say, well, maybe it's. That's why I think it's good that people experience it, because otherwise, like, if everything is always kid friendly and happy and everything like that, and when it's very there's a clear structure on where it's going and that sort of thing, I think that takes a bit away of the experience, because sometimes this film, we could say that it in places it might have gone I might have rambled a bit, that sort of thing with the brigands and
but it's only an hour and a half long. It's a very quick watch.
But I like that. I like that it's it does a lot in a short amount of time without. If
it's very nuanced for a short film. Actually, it's very, very nuanced compared to sort of 85-minute Disney films. It's got real depth.
You would expect something like this usually to be like 2.5 hours, maybe, because there's so much stuff in it. But let's maybe talk about some of that stuff another time.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for joining. It's been fun. Hopefully we can podcast again soon. Thank you to the listener who has stayed with us to the end of the film. Hopefully it's inspired you to rewatch The Last Unicorn or seek it out if you haven't already. Thank you, Matthieu.
Thanks for having me. Let's hope that. I'm always of the opinion that Christopher Lee has not died. He's just gone back to his home planet. Let's see.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's just so sad that we had to, that, because the expectation was that he would live to be 100, hopefully.
Yeah. But I love Christopher Lee. I think he brought seriousness and respect for source material, whether it was children's, adult, whatever it was. That's why he was so great as Dracula, because he brought real intensity to it. And I think this is a classic example. So, farewell Sir Christopher Lee, and thanks for all the amazing, amazing movies.
Yeah, and he read The Lord of the Rings once every year, I guess is what.
Yeah, which is good enough for me.
Yeah. Anyway, but let's conclude here.
Okay. Farewell, listeners. Farewell, Matthieu. Bye, everyone.
Bye.